Here at the Canadian Club, we have always been a forum for public figures, thought leaders, and decision makers to share their ideas and inform the most relevant and compelling conversations of our time.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I know those table settings are still getting a bit cleared away, but we are about to get underway. Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lowe, President of Canadian Club Toronto, and I am delighted to play the role of your host today. Special welcome to those of you who are joining us online, thanks to the AB services of Van Valkenburg Communications and livemeeting.ca. I'd like to express our appreciation to EY, PwC, Crestview Strategy, and TD Securities for generously sponsoring our event today and making our session today possible. And thanks as well to our season sponsor, Canadian Bankers Association, for its support throughout our 125th season. Also, as you may know, we have partnered with Canada's Forest Trust, an ESG company planting smart forests to take positive action against climate change. Thanks to this partnership, we have been reducing the carbon footprint of our entire season of club events. And speaking of footprint, Rogers' footprint in Western Canada is about to grow substantially, with plans for a Calgary headquarters and the addition of over 3,000 new innovation-powered jobs as well. How does the communications powerhouse plan to meet all of the conditions set out by the federal government? What questions might you have for its president and CEO? Please find the Q&A cards at your table, fill them out, and we'll get them up to our moderator, Andy Willis. And for those of you joining us online, as always, hit the Submit a Question button on the right-hand side of the screen, and we'll be sure to get your questions that way as well. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Jad Shamali, Chair and CEO, EY Canada, to introduce our speaker today.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to be here today to introduce Tony Staffieri, CEO and President of Rogers Communications. EY is delighted to be supporting yet another Canadian Club of Toronto event and extremely proud to be a sponsor of today's meaningful and no doubt insightful conversation. Coming up next, we'll hear from Tony, who just closed the biggest merger in Canadian telecom history. Congratulations. Before I pass on the podium to Tony, I want to talk a bit about the telecom industry in Canada. Fast and reliable telecom services are considered a necessity and a significant national asset, especially when digitization is becoming a bit prevalent and a crucial part of any corporation that's out there. The Canadian telecom industry contributes massively to investments across all sectors and into our economy, and it supports and creates hundreds of thousands of jobs as well. And the industry will continue to grow, and its impact will undoubtedly be much bigger in the future than it is even today. For over 60 years, Rogers has been a pioneer and a leader in the industry, offering high-quality and innovative products to Canadians and supporting the development of Canada's much-needed digital economy. With this historic merger, Rogers is shaping the future of all industries by strengthening the telecom infrastructure for the benefits of consumers, businesses, and Canadians in general. Needless to say, the transaction was certainly no small feat. Successfully gaining approval and closing a merger with two of Canada's pioneers in entrepreneurial businesses, just from one side of the country to another, speaks volume to Tony's leadership as a recognized executive in the industry and beyond the industry. And he closed the merger while simultaneously turning around the performance of the company, moving it into a leadership position on virtually every key metric. Prior to his current role, Tony was Chief Financial Officer of Rogers, and before joining Rogers, he held a number of senior leadership roles at PwC, Celestica, and Bell Canada. Supporting local communities as well, Tony chairs the Toronto Metropolitan University's Board of Governors and is a board director of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So, Tony, with the transaction closed and spring almost here, we're all hoping you're going to be turning your attention to the Leafs run and hopefully to a great Jays promising season. Actually, hopefully both. After Tony shares his insights, he will be joined by Andy Willis, business columnist for the Globe and Mail, for an interactive Q&A session. With that, I'd like to welcome Tony on stage.
Thank you, Jad. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Canadian Club for inviting me here today and welcoming Rogers. It really is an honor to be here. So here we are. It only took 2 years, 2 weeks, and 2 days to land our historic merger with Shaw, but who was counting? Over the past 2 years, a lot of people, especially investors outside of our country, questioned the lengthy approval process. By coincidence, T-Mobile and Sprint, $26 billion deal as well, took 2 years in the U.S. Our industry and our networks are vital to Canada's economy, and they're vital to the livelihood of consumers and businesses. Our acquisition of Shaw is also the largest deal in Canadian telecom history. So yes, there were lots of questions, opinions, and approvals, but after an exhaustive process, the courts clearly concluded the deal was good for competition and it was good for Canada. We closed the merger last week, and I suspect I'll never have to worry again about transferring $20 billion in cash over 24 hours. It's actually harder than you think. Kidding aside, the transaction really became 2 transactions as part of one deal. First, Quebecor, owner of Videotron, acquired the Freedom Wireless business, and then right afterwards, Rogers acquired Shaw's cable business in the West, where we don't compete, or didn't compete, together with about 500,000 Shaw wireless customers. Looking back, so much of the story focused on wireless, but the shakeup in cable has been largely glossed over. There's a reason TELUS aggressively fought the merger every step of the way. They've effectively enjoyed a monopoly in bundling wireless and wireline in the West for over a decade. But that's about to change, because we bring a structural advantage, a technological advantage, and a product advantage that's second to none. Thank you. We're working on it. We own Canada's largest national coast-to-coast 5G wireless network, and our newly expanded wireline network now covers 70% of households in the country. This means we can deliver innovative bundling options to consumers in the West, and it means we can offer businesses scale and choice nationally. It also means we can deploy capital faster to build better networks and offer stiffer competition to Bell and TELUS. All of this means more competition, more choice, and a more competitive Canada. So the ink is now dry, and the real work begins. Over the next 24 months, we will integrate the 2 companies and will proudly deliver on the commitments that we've made, namely to invest $6.5 billion over the next 5 years to improve high-speed internet and 5G networks across the West, and to expand Connected for Success, our low-cost internet and wireless program, to 2.5 million low-income Canadians. We genuinely believe a more competitive Canada is a more connected Canada. These investments are part of a much larger effort to invest in Canada and to connect Canadians when and where they want. In the West, we will upgrade and expand our 5G network to over 300 communities. More in Toronto, we've put in place the first phase of a $300 million renovation at Rogers Centre. And earlier this week, we announced plans to bring 5G and 911 emergency calling across the entire Toronto subway system through our acquisition of BAI Canada that held the exclusive rights for the TTC network for the last 10 years. Over the coming weeks and months, you'll hear more on the network front, and stay tuned for more details. At its core, we're a growth company, and with growth comes investment and innovation, and we're investing from a position of strength. When I stepped into this role last January, our performance had been lagging our competitors and we had lost our leadership footing. Last year, we set a clear plan to reestablish our leadership position and to deliver sustained, strong results. We have gone from being last on virtually every key metric to being first on almost all of them. We've successfully returned to growth, and thanks to disciplined execution and clear prioritization, we accomplished this against the backdrop of one of the largest proposed mergers in Canadian history. I'm incredibly proud of our team for their focus, discipline, and commitment. With the deal now done and our performance turned around, we are now squarely focused on one clear goal that's always been our DNA: to be the company Canadians choose first. It really is as simple as that. Thank you, and I now look forward to some Q&A with Andy Willis.
I'm glad we got the handshake out of the way off the start. You may not want to shake my hand if I ask some of the questions that I'm sure some of you want to ask.
Be easy on me, Andy.
It is a happy day for you, and I congratulate you on a transformative transaction. This is an incredibly sad day for me. Between the corporate drama, the family drama, the government drama, Rogers and Shaw had more clicks for the Globe and Mail than any story we've ever covered. Readership's going to drop, and it's all your fault.
We'll do what we can to keep it interesting, Andy.
I suggest you keep it a little boring from here on out. I think we've had enough of interesting. I want to start just with sort of a personal take on sort of how it all felt. And I thought a good place to go would be the Ted Rogers boardroom. Last Friday, or 2 Fridays ago, about 8:30 in the morning, champagne's on television. You're gathered with a number, I'm going to guess, of your key executive, and you're watching the minister finally bless this transaction after 2 years, 2 weeks, a couple of days. What was going through your mind? How did it feel in the moment?
As you would expect, it was relief. You know, we've been going through the journey for a couple of years. And so, you know, the first instance, finally, it's done and we can get on with the business of business. The uncertainty this created is unprecedented in terms of the employees. You know, Shaw had upwards of 10,000 employees, and we have our team members, and all of them are waiting to see what happens. And so you had that, you had our suppliers. A lot of our negotiations, discussions about contracts always had to be short-term because you didn't know what the timing on the deal was going to be. And then, of course, you had investors that were very much wanting to see this done. And that created a lot of uncertainty in the not only equity markets, but in the debt markets as well. And then finally, you had our customers wondering what this meant. So it really was, you know, 2 years of just uncertainty. Every step was, you know, the best way I could describe it, it was like walking in muddy, murky waters. You had to pause every step of the way. sort of regroup on where this was going and what it meant for us. And then all of a sudden it just became clear. And then, you know, within minutes, the weight of it sort of lands on you and my team. We've got two terrific companies that J.R. Shaw and Ted Rogers built in one lifetime. And so the two of these entities coming together and the weight of making sure that we deliver on all the things we said we were going to deliver, all of a sudden came into sharp focus. This is something we're determined to make sure is successful and is going to deliver on everything we said.
And you just finished a tour of Western Canada. You're out in Vancouver, you're out in Calgary visiting the teams. What are you hearing from the Shaw people? Like, what are they excited about or fearful of as you move forward?
Well, I think, you know, if I had to put it simply, they feel like over the last several years, they've been fighting with one arm behind their back. And so what you see is a renewed enthusiasm to be part of an organization that is willing to invest substantially to make sure we have everything we need so we have a competitive advantage against the primary competitor, TELUS, in the West. And so there's just a renewed energy that was, you know, in the room, just palpable. And for those on the screen, and we did a nationwide call or video conference with all our team members, and it was just terrific. The energy's there, the enthusiasm there. You know, both companies grew with an entrepreneurial family background, and so to feel like we are now just one big family is meaningful for all of us.
And you talked a little bit about the experience of the last 2 years, but it has been, you know, incredible for you. You've had the transaction as one priority, but you've also had this huge company to run. You know, you had an outage last year, which you stepped forward as a leader and took control of. Can you sort of talk about, as a new CEO, what it felt like, what stood out for you over the last sort of 18 months?
It's probably two things. You know, as I think about the pace of change, it really is the speed with which the team executed on the change and the turnaround. You know, this is a scale business. Even before Shaw, Rogers is a large entity. And so turning around a business and going from last to first, and what I mean by that, there are certain key value metrics that we look at. The biggest one is customers. Are we winning customers or losing customers? Are we leading in the market or not? Because ultimately, everything we do always comes back to the customer. Are we winning the hearts and minds of customers, and is it showing up with them putting their wallet towards us? That's what we look at. That's the primary metric, and everything flows from that in many ways. And so, as I said, when we looked at these 13 metrics, we were last or close to last on every single one. We were first in none. And for 22, the executive team and the broader team at Rogers moved us to first in 10 of the 13 and second in the remaining. And so there's still lots more to do, but just the speed of that execution really speaks to, when you look at the leadership team, the operational experience that they have in telecom, and more specifically with Rogers, just speaks volumes to be able to do that in every single part of our business. And then the second piece that probably stands out is the resiliency, because the team's doing this at the same time we've got this biggest deal, not just getting the deal done, but getting ready for it, and what it means in terms of what happens day one when a customer calls, what happens day two, what happens day 30 when they get their first bill. So at the same time we're doing this turnaround, we have to plan on what that's going to look like based on a very undetermined date. So living with that uncertainty really speaks to the resiliency and determination of the team.
So I'd love to open it up a little bit, and through the lens of the customer, just talk about what it's going to look like here in Ontario, but also in Western Canada, when, you know, Rogers rolls out with, as you just mentioned in your remarks, a bundled product for the Shaw cable client, but also this little company called Videotron in Quebecor. They're rolling in with as the new owners of Freedom. What do you expect the customer experience is going to look like once Quebecor gets up and running with its fourth national carrier?
Well, there's probably two parts to your question. So the first is, what are we doing? First and foremost, and certainly we take into account what we're expecting all our competitors to do, Bell, TELUS, and of course Videotron. And so we sort of look at the integration from the lens of a few different perspectives. The first is, just as you said, what's the customer experience going to be on day one, and how do we ultimately make this seamless so that they feel like they're dealing with one company for all their connectivity services. And so the integration plans are sort of focused first and foremost around what that customer experience is going to be, and I'll come back to that. The second is our teams. And how do we move from Rogers and Shaw teams to a team of us so that we have absolutely no daylight between any one of our team members, because we know Bell Telus and Videotron will try to capitalize on that. And so we're very quickly making sure we are all wearing one t-shirt, and that's already underway. The third piece of it is bringing our networks together. I mean, ultimately, we're a network company. And so having the Shaw network is going to allow us to bring to market some resiliency and redundancy innovations that'll be Canadian first, and you'll see and hear more about that shortly, that neither one of us could have done alone. And so bringing that network together is important. Then, of course, there are all the things you hear about in terms of IT and back office systems, a lot of complexity. We said it's going to happen starting from, well, some of it started last week and up to 2 years. So expect all of those major milestones to happen over that period of time. In terms of Videotron, we'll have to see. I mean, the Freedom Wireless value proposition has always been centered around price and a price discount. And so we fully expect them to continue on that. And in fact, their commitment of lower prices is centered around that. And then two, we fully expect them to think about, in this world of bundling your out-of-home wireless with in-home wireline services and bundling those, fully expect them to want to offer a bundled services. And outside of Quebec, where they don't have a network, we expect them to buy it wholesale from us or one of our competitors. And so, you know, how are we thinking about that? We'll come at them with all of our 4 Ps in the traditional sense. Certainly on price, we will not be undersold just because of price. So you can expect us to be very aggressive in our value propositions on that. We will leverage our better dealer network. We have the most effective dealer network, almost 6,000 across the country in terms of stores, kiosks, and channels, and we intend to leverage those. We intend to leverage our network superiority. We have the largest and best network, and now that includes wireline as well. And so we can actually bring both of those together in a seamless experience. So it's all those factors that we will look to bring to the market.
It's been fascinating to watch. I think a lot of people in this audience probably saw what I saw, where Tony was up in Ottawa testifying with the committee, and he's sitting next to Pierre-Karl Péladeau, and Pierre-Karl Péladeau is basically saying, I'm here to disrupt the incumbents. I'm here to cause you pain. Can you just, in a few words, just sort of characterize what that partnership with PKP and what that relationship is going to look like with Quebecor for Rogers? Because I mean, they are going to be major customers of your network. It's a big and important step for the utilization of the Rogers network, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, think about our industry twofold. One is where we can and make sense, there's an opportunity to share infrastructure on networks, and we've done that with Videotron Quebecor in the province of Quebec. Yeah. And that's been going on for some time, and that's under the 3.5 and 4G network. On 5G, we both decided to go it alone in the province of Quebec, and you know, again, where possible, we'll share infrastructure like backhaul and towers to make it more cost effective, you know, on the agenda of continuing to bring down prices for both of us. And so that makes sense, but that doesn't take away from the fact that we will continue to compete viciously for the customer. So not surprised by what he said, and fully expect that's how this industry has been built. And so we just look at it as competition on the ice, and that's part of what we do.
Again, from the consumer lens, Tony, one of the columnists, a guest columnist in the Globe and Mail, wrote a story basically saying you can't come through on a promise on lower cell phone fees. And this was more directed to Freedom than to Rogers. But the argument was you can't be profitable for shareholders while at the same time lowering cell phone fees. I thought it was a simplistic argument. I'd love to hear sort of your take on the sort of are those conflicting goals? Lower fees for consumers while at the same time turning a good profit for customers?
Yeah, I think the short answer is absolutely not. And you know, history has shown us we can do both. If you were to look at over the last several years, frankly, for the industry, and over the last little while for Rogers. The industry, if you looked at the last 4 years, wireless prices in Canada have come down 30%. And they've come down double digits in the last 12 months in the face of significant inflation. So what you do see is prices coming down, and you do see us becoming more efficient and delivering on improved profitability. So they don't have to necessarily go hand in hand. Trying to figure out the right value proposition and cost efficiency is all part of continuing to bring it down. I have no doubt prices will continue to come down at a roughly similar pace, and maybe even more, depending on how the market plays out. But you got to realize that's all happening against a backdrop where the size of the market continues to grow. We've had incredible population growth in Canada. And so what you see is wireless in 22, the wireless market grew by over 5%. We haven't seen that kind of growth in a long, long time in the wireless sector. So we have growth. We're underpenetrated in Canada. And what I mean by that is when you look at the number of cell phones that are out there relative to the population, we sit well behind the US and other developed countries. And so we still have a lot of maturing to do in terms of penetration, and a number of other factors. And so the market continues to grow. We'll all continue to be more efficient. And a long-winded answer to the two do go hand in hand, and frankly have to go hand in hand.
I'm going to stick with this idea of tension, but I do know my audience here. I'm looking across this audience. I see a number of my banker friends. Obviously, you took on a significant amount of debt to get the Shaw transaction done, something that is not unknown in the history of Rogers. In fact, I think these debt levels are significantly lower than when I first started to cover the company when Ted Rogers was issuing junk bonds. But you've made some aggressive commitments to lowering the debt levels over the next 24 months, while at the same time, significant capital spending is going to take place in the Rogers network. You're committed, for example, to $1 billion of spending on rural and Indigenous community infrastructure out in Western Canada. So do you just want to talk as CEO about how you're going to achieve your goals and reducing debt while at the same time building out the platform?
Rogers has always been about growth and aggressive growth. And that's still the plan as we come together with Shaw. So, as we thought about the transaction, plan for the transaction, I went through all the steps of the transaction, we had to come up with a model that was going to be balanced. We still had to fund growth. And at the core of our business, if you're not investing in the network first and foremost, you become irrelevant and you limit yourself on growth. So we needed a model that was going to allow us to continue to invest and ramp up investments, frankly, in the West, as we've said we would do, while at the same time getting our debt leverage down. As you said, it's a lot of debt, but the plan is to continue to invest, continue to grow and lead on market share. And if we do those right, then you'll see leverage come down. Much of the discussion has been about how do you pay it down? Well, every $1 billion of debt repayment reduces our leverage by 0.1. And to put it in perspective, on close, our leverage is 5.3. And so every debt repayment of $1 billion, we reduce it by 0.1. If we improve our profitability or EBITDA by $1 billion, we reduce it by 0.5. So the game plan for us is we have to do both, but let's index on continuing to grow, because ultimately that's the pathway and the more effective pathway to getting our leverage down.
Well, that actually does open the door to one of the suggestions I've heard from individuals in this audience who are always looking for their next mandate. Would Rogers consider asset sales to lower debt levels? For example, the credit rating agencies, I reported on this, credit rating agencies have suggested, if you weren't able to hit your debt reduction goals, you might consider selling the Cogeco stake or somehow spinning out sports assets. Do you want to, or media assets? Do you want to just quickly address your thoughts on asset dispositions?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there are different categories. And so if I touch on the few categories, certainly from the ownership of sports-related assets like our Sportsnet distribution business, it's a good asset. It continues to grow in value. It does well. If you're at the Rogers Centre last night, just in terms of the exposure that it provides to us as an ownership and the growth in value that the Jays in and of themselves have and our other sports team, it's a good investment. And so there's no intent to sell those assets. You then move to the next large category in coming together with Shaw, combined with the whole work from home and how that evolves. We're certainly going to have excess real estate space. And so you can expect us over the next 24 months to be very thoughtful and methodical in how we go about looking at the real estate portfolio, which is in the billions of dollars, and how we rationalize that. To be clear, our intent is to ensure we have a presence in every market, and that's just part of our business. So we'll continue to do that. But in locations, Toronto is a great example where we have more than one location. There's an opportunity to rationalize that. So you can expect us to monetize that over a period of time. And then the last one is, the Cogeco stake. We own about a third of the equity of Cogeco, and it's a cable business. We're in the cable business, and it has been and continues to be a good investment. Might we look at it at some point? Possibly, but there are no plans right now.
Okay, thanks. That's a detailed answer. I always like to ask CEOs in places like this, just cast forward for a little bit. Tell me if you are successful at Rogers, what is Rogers going to look like in 5 years' time? How would you benchmark your performance and the company's performance?
Well, I bring it back to some of the items I touched upon. If we are successful in executing what we say we're going to do, then 5 years from now, we are the brand and the company that Canadians choose first. Every day, more than Bell, TELUS, or Videotron. So that's job one. The second is, and it's somewhat related, we really need to work on the consumer value perception. Today, if you think about your cell phone and everything you rely on it for, all that connectivity that runs your life costs you less than a cup of coffee a day. I'm not sure all consumers feel like they're getting that kind of value. And so I think we need to drive home better the value perception of our industry and of Rogers. So there's work to do there. If we do those two things right, then 5 years from now, you have a company with a strong balance sheet, and we hope our shareholders look back over the previous 5 years and say, it was a good investment. It was a good investment for me. And then the last piece, a lot of talk now about the Shaw integration, next steps, what it looks like and what it means. And if we do this right in 5 years, it won't even be in the vocabulary. It's just going to be about one Rogers serving Canadians nationally.
I'm going to take it really local for a moment. As we said off the top, you got some headlines earlier this week with the announcement that you're going to buy BAI, the provider of internet service and 911 service on Toronto Transit, which sadly is much more of an issue right now than I think any of us want it to be. And if I looked at the Toronto mayor race right now, a number of the mayor candidates are saying, well, wait a minute, Rogers has to give access to your competitors, to Bell and TELUS on the subways. Do you want to just talk for a minute about the rationale behind that acquisition, what Torontonians can look forward to, and are you going to give Bell and TELUS access, or does Rogers go it alone on that BAI service?
Yeah, so a couple of parts there. One is, this started a year ago. What our customers told us was, I need connectivity on the subway. Just not having it, especially as they were getting back on, coming to offices, not having connectivity in a city like Toronto just didn't make sense. And so we looked at, how do we get Rogers connectivity there? The reality is the TTC gave away the exclusive rights 10 years ago to a deal they did with BAI, an Australian firm, and they did it through their Canadian subsidiary. So we quickly got into talks with BAI about buying that contract. We wanted access, we wanted to provide the connectivity. And this is before much of the concerns around safety surface. As I said, this dates back a year ago that we've been in talks trying to get this forward, and ultimately the easiest way was to just buy out the Canadian subsidiary, which the biggest asset is this contract. And so, and it's become much more timely now. And so the announcement of it and it coming together is timely. Our intent is to get on this real quick. We really need to figure out and implement on a timely basis 911 emergency calling throughout the subway transit system. And it doesn't matter who you're on. It could be us, Bell, TELUS, Videotron. It doesn't matter. It's got to work for everybody, and it will work for everybody. So that's first and foremost. What you'll then see is, as we build this out, and it's going to take approximately 2 years, and the reason it takes that is we only have 2 to 3 hours each night when they shut down the subway system to build it out. We'd like to do it sooner. TTC is committed to give us as much access as possible. Realistically, that's the time frame, but it isn't going to be like 2 years from now, it turns on. You'll get bits and pieces, 911 first, then you'll get text messaging, then you'll get voice, and then you'll get full video streaming. And that's sort of the plan over those 2 years. And as I said, we want to do this aggressively. We think it's important for not just our customers, but for Torontonians. And that was our intent in doing this. If Bell Telus want to step up and join in, and we're happy and open to having those discussions with them. But there's no intent to prevent any customer, regardless of what network they're on, to have access within the TTC subway system.
As someone who's on the TTC every day and has 2 kids on the TTC every day, that's a great answer. Thanks. I really applaud you for that. As Colleen mentioned, this is your event. I welcome your questions. This from the floor. It's from an equipment supplier. I'm not sure if he wants the name, but the message is, congratulations on concluding the deal. What new services and innovation is the joint company of Rogers and Shaw focused on?
They probably fall into a few categories. Thank you for the question, equipment supplier. And you're going to be busy. They really revolve around continuing to expand technologies so that, especially for a country like Canada, and places in the West, because you have a lot of small, I'll say small towns, nestled in the mountains, et cetera. How do you get connectivity and quality in some of those communities? And so we've got wireless, we've got wireline, we expand on both of those. But what's the third technology that we can bring to bear so that there is connectivity literally from coast to coast? And as I said, more to come on that. And then the second piece is the resiliency of it, so that as we look to all of these alternatives to connect, if one goes down, how do we make it seamless so that you fall back on one of the other ones and you won't even know that you're on a secondary backup network that we're providing to you. So those are kind of the two things that you should expect to hear and see more from over the short while.
Okay. And the next question, I think, proves your point that sports is a key asset in the Rogers empire. How are the Blue Jays going to do this season?
They're going to do great. You see them last night?
Tampa's hot, but the Blue Jays, yeah, it's a long, long season. I wanted to sort of close out on a personal note, because outside of work, you've got a passion for education. You're chair at Toronto Metropolitan University. You've got great plans, I know, for expanding TMU over the next few years. Why did you choose education as the focus of your philanthropy? And a lot of extra volunteer hours.
Oh, education's the big equalizer. It's the one that opens doors and opportunities. My parents were immigrants to this country. And I remember as they started their business, my mom, I'd go with her to the library and she'd get books on accounting so she could figure out how to keep track of records and things like that. I was lucky enough to then go to university from there. And so when I look at a place like Canada, a place like Toronto, there's a lot of talent. And if there's anything we can do to tap into that talent, that's why I'm passionate about scholarships as well. Because a lot of times, a place like TMU, more than half the students are first or second generation to this country. And so a lot of times they're thinking about their next paycheck and paying the bills, et cetera. And so if we can tap into that talent and make it easier so that they sort of pause and say, maybe this is for me. And that's, it's part of what we do at TMU, part of, the Ted Rogers Scholarship Program. And that's really what it's about, is how do we invest in the future? And I genuinely mean that because it's good for Canada in terms of getting talent to the forefront, and it's the equalizer, as I said.
As the father of a graduate of TMU and someone who's seen the difference that university is making in our community, I applaud you for that focus for your philanthropic efforts. That's the questions that I've got, and that, more importantly, brings us sort of to the end of our time. I wish you all the best on the transaction. At the risk of having no more great headlines and no more clicks at the Globe and Mail, I know that execution is the key, and what you're doing is essential infrastructure for Canadians. And I think I speak for everybody in this room in saying that we all wish you the best after this transformative acquisition, and I thank you for taking time. I'm now going to turn the podium over.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks all for coming.
We're now going to turn the podium over to Lana Patton, the partner and vice chair of PwC.
Thank you so much, Tony, and I certainly think that you've provided a lot of insight, especially around your thoughts for what the merger means for customers, for businesses, and especially for our country. And thank you, Andrew, for really moderating and asking some of those questions that I know I certainly had in my mind, and some of the suppliers definitely had in their mind apparently as well. So some of the things that in the conversation that I know that I will take away today is certainly a focus on customers. I heard that a lot, a focus on customers, a focus on innovation and investment, and I really appreciated some of those insights that you provided today, Tony. I know that a lot of us are definitely interested in those things. And thank you very much to the entire audience. I think we've had quite a few people who were mentioning today how many of you came to hear Tony speak today, and I think to listen to this lively and engaging conversation. So thank you all for coming today. And with that, I will pass it over to Joe Lowe for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lana. Ladies and gentlemen, before we conclude, let me just share a couple words about a number of our upcoming events. On Wednesday, April 19th, Joanna Griffiths and Noura Sakaja, two trailblazing futurepreneurs, will engage us about how they built their brands and their visionary plans for the future. On Wednesday, April 26th, we'll host a panel discussion on the leadership implications and the risks and rewards of being an outspoken CEO. This event features Megan Roach, CEO of Roots, among other distinguished thought leaders. And finally, on Tuesday, May 2nd, we are pleased to welcome Premier Ranj Pillai, leader of the Yukon Territory, to our podium as well. Please visit us at canadianclub.org to learn more about these events, find ticket options and membership options as well. I'd like to offer a final round of thanks and appreciation to today's event sponsors, EY, PwC, Crestview Strategy, and TD Securities, and one last shout out as well to Air Canada, our official airline sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today in person here at the Royal York as well as online. Look forward to seeing you at one of those upcoming events. Have a great day and see you again very soon.